Do you have a motion on the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda and would like to propose an amendment thereafter.
All right, what are your proposed amendments?
I'd like to add item 7.03, Director of Aviation job description to be led by Bill Keogh. And that is my only amendment.
7.04 is,
03,
okay,
right?
yep.
Yes.
Only allows 2, so I
Okay.
figured you didn't
Yeah.
want to add some.
Oh, did it say 4?
No, you didn't. You said 3.
Right. That's correct. Is there 7.04 in my taxi report?
Oh, you have a report for, okay.
Yes,
Oh, you have a report.
I have a report
Then
there,
I would like to add item
7.04.
7.04 taxi report to also be led by Bill Keogh.
Taxi reform, is that
Report.
a report? Okay. I'll,
Any other amendments? Motion on the floor with 2 amendments. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the agenda as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Jeff Munger, you with us?
Yeah,
Okay, just want to make sure.
well, I'm not on video, I don't think, but I'm here.
No, you're not.
Okay,
When I click it, it says you haven't turned me on.
what turns you on?
I don't know. I guess it has to be-
A martini.
That's a good
That's why you
answer.
stay home.
Okay, in the public forum, is there anyone in the public forum who wishes to converse with the airport commission? Public forum, there's a person?
Mayor Law is here. She
Oh,
has her-
good,
and she has
Mayor
her
Law.
hand raised. I just allowed her to speak.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. This may need to wait until later in the agenda. I saw the sound pilot program is on here. I had some questions about outreach and communications plans, so I could ask them now or wait for that agenda item.
On the sound pilot program?
Yes.
Well, unless you have pressing business, I would think it would make sense after we have the report update to then ask questions, correct?
Yeah. Yeah,
Certainly.
Christine, I think we'll give you the opportunity to offer questions on the agenda item. Is that all right?
Yeah, perfect. I'll wait for you guys to do that section.
Okay, when it comes up, you speak up.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Anyone else in public forum? Okay, seeing none, we'll close that item. The next item is the consent agenda.
I move that we adopt the contents of the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda items. Any discussion?
I just had a quick question on some of the data, or one question on the data. So I noticed it was really good that the garage utilization is like right back up to where it has been historically, which is great. I'm just curious why it's so high when we're, and employments are recovering, but haven't fully recovered yet, but garage is like right where we always have been. So just curious if you have any thoughts on that.
It's slightly artificial, that number, and maybe we should probably clarify that, and Shelby is online as well. We do have employees parking in there, not just city employees, but all employees. And we also have other employees, specifically Beta Technologies, as they're undergoing construction. So there's a significant amount of vehicles in there that are not passing. Shelby, do you want to correct me on anything or make sure, verify that's accurate?
That is accurate. We do try to account for those, but they do sneak through. But we are trending a little bit higher. Not 100% sure exactly what's going on, and that kind of aligns with the revenues that Marie and I are seeing every morning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
And
all set?
that's the critical piece right there, is the revenue piece on that parking garage.
Absolutely.
Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, no. So ordered. Next is the construction update. Larry?
Okay, are there any, the first one, are there any questions on the update I did? And then I can go into the 2 items we listed. Any questions for me for what I provided?
Proceed.
Okay, then the 2 items to highlight, first one being the terminal integration project, as everybody can see is going by, it's being enclosed. The concrete floors have been poured. Nick has in the office all the final finishes that we're going through right now to select, which are consistent with the mural downstairs as you're looking where it's going to be as you go through TSA. So things are going along very well. It's almost fully enclosed. They're working on roofing. So there's really not much more to add except it's going very well.
I think the real exciting part to add to what Larry said is in the next couple of weeks, they're going to be entering this facility, which means that the 2 buildings are fully connected and starting some of the interior work as Larry described. And I could show those materials just so you have a concept of what it's going to look like afterwards. And that relates to complete remodeling of literally everything behind this wall right here, including our airport offices, which ties into an agenda item for the airport budget amendment down below here. But really exciting stuff because this is a big project, working on it a long time. The whole team has, Larry especially, on making sure that we're on budget, up to speed, and certainly getting ready to open it next year.
Good.
When do you expect it to be completed?
Well, October next year. Also, we're getting
October 22.
Right. However, there is a chance, just again, we might have people going through it sooner because we're trying to coordinate with the TSA because they're bringing in all new screening equipment down there. So it all depends on their schedule too. So
the phasing of opening, or what is it called? The commissioning of opening it is going to be a critical component to that particular time frame, not just in the new building, but all of our signage has to change throughout the entire building.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
So
where to go?
it gets complex, and Hannah's been working really hard on changing current signs because there's some confusion out there with which TSA checkpoint is open right now, et cetera, which I cannot wait to say there's only one TSA checkpoint.
Right. So can I do a follow-up?
Sure.
Where the upstairs, where the existing TSA is, and probably, I guess downstairs too. Although, does that get integrated?
Yep.
That's part of it, but that stuff, the northern end is not. So what will that become? Seating for people waiting for their plane?
Yeah, that's a great question. We as a leadership team have a vision for what that might look like. Holding area or seating area is certainly one of those, especially at that particular gate, because that gate 8 is one of the most crowded because it accommodates the largest aircraft on the exterior of the building. United Airlines main line typically to Chicago and sometimes Denver. So that expansion all the way to where those escalators are,
Right.
and shutting down those escalators, we're already received some quotes to do some of that work, but there's more to it. There's going to be additional opportunities to expand additional concessions in that particular space. I've had conversations with Hudson News and Skinny Pancake as we open that space up, what could that look like? Because that's 60% of our passengers that are in that particular terminal. So there's some really great opportunities to maybe have a bigger bar, or at least additional seating for that restaurant and news and gifts locations. So there are some shifts and design plans happening right now for exactly that. It's going to look very different, opened up much, much wider, as well as this hallway all the way back to the new building. The exit door is also going to be potentially shift as well, that one exit door. So there's a lot of conversation on what that might look like specifically to open by October of next year.
Thank you.
Good.
The next one is what Mayor Long was bringing up, the sound installation program. As I'm sure you've seen on the news, the acoustical testing plan got approved by the FAA, and that's been happening. We had I wouldn't call it a public meeting, but we met with several homeowners via a video or virtually, and we got that going. The plan is we have a current grant where we're doing all this pilot program where we will bid out 10 homes. We already have the money to construct or do those improvements to those 10 homes. However, if you read further into my notes, our next plan is to try to capture another 10 to apply for a grant and bid them separately, but at the same time, so we can go for another grant, not only for the first reach out of the 10 pilot with the 50 reach out, another 50 reach out and kick up 10 quicker this year, if we can get that bid at the same time. So we're out there, we have a list of more than 20 people we're doing the testing on right now. So we can potentially move 20 forward this year rather than just 10. So if you want to help.
That's great.
So those 10, you're going to be testing with the noise machines and stuff to see what a home needs or if it qualifies.
Correct.
So you have at least 20, I guess you've identified.
We've got more than 20.
Potentially not, I mean, out of 20, you may not get 10.
That's correct.
Possibly, okay.
And I mean, the folks that we reached out to, I would say the majority of them are interested, which is not a
So that's
surprise.
the other
really.
issue, right? You have
Yeah.
to get their interest.
Right, because it's a voluntary program.
Yeah.
Not a surprise that the majority of them are. So I think we tested between 15 and 20 of them already, the acoustical testing,
Oh,
to
okay.
identify just that. Are they eligible? Is the interior noise level, does it meet the federal threshold for sound insulation or not? And then we can move forward from there.
The key part is we get the first 10 bid, the money we did on estimate with the FAA, we have that. The goal is to keep pushing so we can, bid out another 10 before a grant application is due and apply for the next 10 and try to squeeze it in this year rather than waiting another whole year before we go for 50 or 100.
And we'll do that every year. We'll push those boundaries every year to try to access additional grant funding, either early, more grant funding, just a larger quantity of grant funding, or at least just be prepared for the following year to apply for our regular $5 million annual grant funding that the FAA is committed to so far.
Got that email from me about the lady. Did I not send it to you? Yes, I didn't. I just had someone who wrote me about she's interested. She's called, but no one's called back. Whoops. So I got her name and phone number and address.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I forgot to.
That's okay.
I just, met her at, the senior dinner last Friday and I forgot about it.
Okay.
I will get that to you. She
Perfect.
was
Is there any
interested
appeal?
to know the process.
Okay.
Does that?
Yep, thank you.
Is there any appeal process if somebody's house is not qualified? Is the decision not to do that final, or is there any sort of an appeal process?
I don't know the answer. That would work.
I
You
don't
can say no,
know.
if there isn't.
I think that's going to require additional follow-up from us, just to confirm. Within our implementation plan, I do recall us talking about that, but I just want to confirm before I
Okay.
answer.
Okay. Any other questions of Larry on this?
Well, didn't Mayor Lott had
Oh.
some.
Christine,
Sure, can you all hear me again?
you may.
can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep.
Okay, great, thanks. So what I wanted to know is how you're reaching out to property owners or how they can find out if they are under consideration or asked to be considered as we look towards the 50 homes a year.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. On this particular pilot program, there was direct communication via letter, a simple letter, and then some additional follow-up if we needed to make sure that they understood the program, understood the timeframes, the testing criteria, et cetera. The next 50 houses will be similar as well and we haven't gotten there just yet, but to identify where exactly they fall within the decibel levels, specific decibel levels, as well as following the implementation plan of ratios between the towns, as we talked about during that process. So it really comes down to direct mailings to these individual folks. We do have one consultant on site that,
We have
that
a
helps us-
liaison.
a liaison, right?
Yeah, that is communicating with all these people and communicating, reporting back to us, doing this full time. She's in the area, living here, moving this forward with her.
Yeah, my hope in the future, Mayor Lott, is we have a potential opportunity, and this is extremely preliminary because I have to go through some approvals with South Burlington, and of course this is going to be in the future based on the future residents of this particular person. We do have a life estate on a particular property that my hope is to incorporate into this program and have as a headquarters for this consultant to not only display some of the materials that are going to be available to these homeowners, but also be that direct point of contact, whether it's somebody going to that site or having an actual office location and office hours, so that people can have that direct communication. My hope is that we can do this, and I think it's going to have to be a further conversation with South Burlington to make sure that it's an appropriate use.
And well, we're going through this pilot program. I think things are going to get more solidified over the next couple, 3 months, where we'll actually have those lists and be able to move forward, quicker once we have this information. So.
Okay. If it would be okay, I would like to send some suggestions to our aviation director, Nick, and for your consideration as you firm up what communications look like in the pilot year. But absolutely. I can communicate that back to my constituents that the focus right now is on the pilot. There's not a way for you to apply to be in the next consideration.
Correct.
That's being firmed up.
Correct. That's absolutely correct, and I look forward to that. I think that'll be welcomed for additional communication efforts.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you for showing up and offering those comments. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Just one more question for Nick, if I may.
Oh,
and that is, I guess it's more of a suggestion, but remembering what this woman wanted to know is kind of the time frame, because she's interested in having some insulation blown into her house. And, she's older. She went to a senior dinner. So she isn't going to be there in 25 years. I don't think so. So she's kind of trying to figure out if she should just go ahead with it on her own or wait. So it might be kind of cool if you had tiers of houses. I don't know, addresses or streets.
At least broken by 50s. So
so someone could look it up and say, oh, they're not going to get to me until 2030.
Right.
So my decision right now is I need some new windows.
Right.
I don't want to wait 9 years.
Yeah.
Which is fair enough.
I think that's easily doable, and I think it's a great suggestion because honestly, that doesn't surprise me. I've had probably a dozen conversations at least of similar homeowners that are in that tricky situation, whether they're on the very edge of the contour line or just trying to produce their own projects, but don't necessarily know the time frame. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Why the limit of 10 or 50?
Well,
Does that reduce the funding?
No, the 10 is to study and to do the acoustical testing, so we have a plan.
Okay.
So once in that, I don't know if you saw in the news, but they have the big speakers that are blowing the noise towards the house, and they're testing the noise levels inside and out.
Oh.
Okay, so that's all going on right now. So once we have that figured out for these types of homes, we can move that plan forward. And part of this first grant we received is to do the sound installation for 10 homes, but also reach out to the next 50, which goes to the first list of 50. But we're also at the same time we just received a scope So we can apply for another grant in May, reach out to another 50, but try to get another, even though we're only going to do 10 in this pilot, well, let's bid 10 and 10 so we can do 20, you know? So, but we need the pilot program to design.
Okay.
So
That's a key factor is there's very particular steps that the FAA wants to see and approve. So this pilot program, just like Larry said, is going to identify the type of house, the year it was built, the type of roof, is it brick, that sort of thing, and identify, okay, this type of house in interior noise level based on these studies is eligible. So there's a potential that all of those types of houses are also eligible. So this year is a little bit different because of the pilot program. And then in the future, it's gonna broaden much bigger into the 50 houses that we're studying, 50 houses that we're constructing in one particular year. And that's really tied to the funding source, which is $5 million a year. That really is why it's 50 houses. Yeah.
You get a handle too on the cost. If it's brick and it's 30 years old, typically maybe it'll be, I don't know, $40,000. Maybe another house
Great
might
point.
be 60 or 50,
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
in the current grant, we estimated right now at 50 or 50 each, 50,000.
50,000.
Right, yeah, I know that, but as they test it, they
Right.
may find that certain
Yeah.
types
Right.
are a little cheaper or a little more
Yeah.
expensive than they thought.
And similarly, as we go out of the contour lines, there might not be as much material needed in those particular houses. So that's also going to be a consideration. I had something else that was relevant, but I forgot.
Okay, good. Thank you. Larry, any more questions to Larry?
I just one
Interesting
question,
topic. Go
just
ahead.
one follow-up to Nick. You mentioned, and maybe we talked about this before, but I don't have to remember it. But what is when you talk about the ratio between the towns, what is that ratio?
I always forget what it is, but it was based essentially on the total number of dwelling units that are within the program in each community.
Okay.
So right now, there's a significant amount of dwelling units in Winooski.
Right.
Therefore, that ratio is higher.
So
at
it's a
this
portion
point
of
in time.
dwelling like in the 75 contour or something like that?
In all contours right
In all
now,
contours.
yeah. Because if we only said within that particular, let's say the 70 to the 75 DNL, there's very little dwelling units within Winooski that are within those contours.
Okay.
Most of those are within South Burlington. So we tried to even it out based on geography, demographics, as well as economic status within some of these communities to make sure that it's being dispersed amongst all of the communities, whether it's single family, multifamily, or whatever that particular status is.
Probably with the politics too.
Well, I'm just kidding. I'm not so much like how the sausage got made. It's like, what does the sausage look like at the end of the day?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, if you could just follow up and let me know, or let us know
Absolutely.
how that's going to break out by community. That would be interesting.
Okay. Larry,
I'm good, thank you very much.
you're good. Okay, next, you got the terminal, the gifts,
Yeah, I gave you
That's all
the turnout and I
done.
did this
some
pilot
done.
with-
Okay, financial package.
Well,
Marie.
thank you. The financial package includes the October P&L, profit and loss. It also includes cash and AIC receivable. So I'll go through sort of my write-up and see where you have any questions or want to know more information. We have last month, in fact, I think it was the day we were at our meeting, we got word that we were going to get the latest stimulus grant. We have, in fact, we did finally receive that stimulus grant. It is signed by both the FAA and the city. So we have a new grant for $7 million. That's the ARPA grant, and we'll be getting an additional concession relief, about $600,000. We have not seen that grant award come down yet, but we know it's coming. I think the highlight to let you know, in the first 4 months of this year, so July, August, September, and October, Our revenues have been very strong because our passengers have recovered, not to where they were, but have done really well, have been very strong for those months. And so our revenues were sufficient enough to cover our expenditures. And there was not the need to draw down additional funds. They're available and they're still available. We have 4 years to use them, but we didn't have to draw down any of the stimulus monies for the first 4 months. So, it just helps us going forward. There's lots of ways we can use that money, and we still have some uncertainty with we're not out of this yet.
And you have 5 years?
4 years.
4 years.
We have 4 years for each grant. Yeah. We have not had to borrow any money under the grant anticipation note. We did renew both the grant anticipation note and the revenue anticipation note on November 17th. Those documents closed. Those are like available line of credits for us. The grant anticipation note we would use if we were running low on monies and we needed we were waiting on a closeout of a grant particular, we might want to draw down under the grant anticipation note to help us with our cash flow. You'll see from our cash statement, we haven't needed to do that. And likewise, the same thing with the revenue anticipation note. We did borrow another $11.1 million. It is a line of credit. We didn't draw it down. This is different. Last year, we were told we needed to draw it down, but this year I said, we don't need to draw it down. We really didn't need to go on it. But it's there again, in case that the waters get rough and we have issues with our cash flow. We are protecting in the interest of the airport and making sure we're doing our due diligence. Our year-to-date revenues through October were $7.2 million. I do note again that we didn't draw down under the GAN. Our operating revenues, just to give you the first 4 months compared to last year, of course, last year we were in the middle of the pandemic, about $4.2 million higher than they were a year ago. I mean, the effects of the loss of employments in the traveling public were significant to the airport. So our fiscal year to date revenues are 85% of what they were 2 years ago for those first 4 months.
Good.
So, this is the reason, and our expenditures, we'll talk about that in a second, but we've been keeping them in check. I put a chart in here. I wanted to kind of give you an idea, and this is really based on your suggestion, Tim, to try to get some sense. I compare on the financial information compared to last year. It's a little difficult to compare 1 year back when we had such variability, right? We're still in where we're still not back to where we were, but I wanted to give you an idea. Here are we today, where were we a year ago, and where were we 2 years ago? So the percentage of the recovery is compared to 2 years ago. All right, I'm looking back pre-COVID when I say the recovery. So parking garage, you can see quite a variation in numbers there, but we're at 70% recovery for our revenues. Car rental revenues are actually above what we were.
Why is that?
Well, I'll tell you, I think there is higher prices that are being charged to rent cars. And a lot of that has to do with supply and demand. I think when the car rental, they had to kind of shut down for a while and they didn't have the availability necessarily of cars. This is across the country. It's more difficult to get. If you travel, you better make that arrangement almost like the minute you know what your flight is to go ahead and rent that car. And so I think we're seeing the effects of that here. So our car rental revenues don't necessarily reflect that traffic is there.
Just the price increase.
The pricing is, and our contract is we're that does benefit the airport. CFC revenues, we're at 76%. You are going to see that have a really good recovery. We have increased the amount of the CFCs for a year, and we'll relook at it, but to $6 instead of $4 a car.
Do you have the authority to do that?
We do. It's not set by charter. And so we've been negotiating. We haven't signed the contracts with the car rental agencies yet, but they made it effective because we're so close to finishing up those negotiations and we're on agreement on every point. that they went ahead and they did increase that for new reservations.
Okay,
And it really is more of a, I want to say like a COVID recovery charge in our eyes. And the important thing to remember about those CFCs, they do, in fact, we have some partial recovery that helps with the garage. And last year in fiscal year 2021, we were not able to fully draw enough money because we didn't have the revenues.
right.
We had a limitation on that. And the other thing is we're paying for the lease on the QTA and we're paying for the operating costs on the QTA. So it's really important, you know, in our discussions, and we can go back down to the $4 if we see that need no longer exists. But while the traffic isn't come back to 100%, it's really important to ensure that we are covering all those costs that we have associated with the QTA and the garage.
Is it likely you would drop that figure, 6 to 4?
I think over time, as we see a full recovery, I think we'll run the numbers and see where we are.
Okay, good.
So you're going to see that number is going to look a lot better as we go forward here, which I would expect.
You'll see that contract that she's referring to hopefully in January for your approval or for your recommendation to the city council to approve so that we can sign it. I think a key component to reducing that $6 figure is truly understanding the QTA. That was a major driving impact to exactly what Maria was talking about, because we never operated the QTA before. So we wanted to make sure those costs were recovered immediately, and then we can start evaluating the facility of that particular item.
Thank you.
And you can see our PFC revenues, we're at 67%. So again, a good indication, you'll see that correlating with employments. And our landing fees are at 73%. So, you know, quite a difference when you compare the numbers this year to even a year ago and now to 2 years ago. I thought that was important. Our year-to-date expenses were just under $4 million. That's actually lower than last year at the same number of months in, and it's about $500,000 lower than 2 years ago. Some of that is timing. I know that we have some major repairs and maintenance items that we are anticipating doing. We haven't done all of them yet. So I expect as the year goes on, by the time we get to June, I think we're going to see higher expenses this year than we had last year. That's what we budgeted. That's what we intend to do. So I don't want you to think it's going to stay lower, you know, than last year. Our cash update as of November 30th, we had $5.7 million in the airport checking account. And our AIP receivable, our grants receivable was about $2.2 million. So that varies based on the timing of when we pay for those AIP expenditures and then how quickly we can get reimbursed. Sometimes I've got to pay something the last week of the month and I don't get reimbursed till the following month. So, you know, we see some variation in there, but we turn those, as soon as we're paying big bills, we're asking the FAA for our money to reimburse. And then the audit was issued on November 30th. So that I know that is our next item, but before I move on to that, I want to give all of you an opportunity to ask any questions you might have of our finances.
No, I think it's great.
Yeah, I had 3 questions. You already answered all first.
Yeah.
I do my best to not
Because you know they're coming. So. Great job.
You know, the layout was really helpful.
Great.
Yep.
I liked particularly the percentage of recovery, because I think that's what people are interested in hearing, not necessarily.
85% revenue. That's incredible.
Yeah.
That little box.
Yeah, no, that was good.
Yeah, I think it's really important as we come, you know, we're been in this, what, 1 year and 9 months, but it's really important for us to start looking back and kind of see how we are. We always know where we are today, but it's really interesting from my perspective to see how we weathered this particular event, how we can do better. And, you know, we've been so fortunate to be the recipient of the stimulus money and safeguarding that for using it the best that we can when we truly need it. So go ahead.
I can't believe the amount of money we're getting from FAA. Whoa, okay, go ahead.
Oh, I know what they're.
All of our,
it's like $35 million more in projects.
Good.
I was curious to understand on the salaries.
Yes.
You're a little bit behind,
We're a
but,
little
you know,
lower.
you're like at 27% or something, and it should be 33.
Right.
So is that because you're doing 2 jobs?
Right now,
I mean,
technically,
Yes,
there's-
Nick's saving us money.
there's 3 positions
There's 3 now.
under
okay,
me
so
right
it's
now.
open positions or
Yeah,
unfilled positions.
that is in some way being dispersed differently, not all of it, but
Yeah.
dispersed differently. And then there's additional vacant positions out there from all across the board, from ambassadors, which if anybody is listening, we are hiring for ambassadors right now to join the airport team. And I think there's a couple of other open positions as well, which is part of a potential reorganization that I'm working on to either capture those positions or to look at this a little bit differently across the organization.
Okay, without getting burned down. I mean, that's important.
Extremely important.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we just had this is relevant, I think, to the conversation, but we just finished up a committee to hire a new deputy director of deputy director of aviation operations, which was my previous role. And I think we are very close to coming to a conclusion and offering a job.
Right, so you've had people apply.
We had 16 people apply from across the country.
Well, I think given the strength of the recovery and what is sort of looking ahead in terms of FAA funding for various things which strengthens the airport, that this is, and the size relative to other airports who aren't getting those funding, I would think this would be an attractive place.
I think you hit the nail right on the head, not only from the airport perspective, but from the regional quality of life, safety perspective when it comes to COVID. I think this is an extremely attractive place to live right now.
Yeah.
Despite the cost of living.
That's a caveat.
It looks like
Hey, Bill?
Jeff had a question. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, I got a
Jeff?
question.
Sure.
Yeah. Seeing as there's no more commissioners item, I thought I'd bring this up now. One's for Marie and the other's for Shelby. Taxi revenues, are they just from Lyft and Uber?
The taxi revenues are from Lyft, Uber, and then the taxi punch cards
Okay,
that we charge
So-
out there. So it's
all right.
more
So
than
they're
just Lyft
still
and Uber.
getting punch cards and are they buying Q permits?
They are, yes, and the Q permits are part of that as well.
Okay.
Yep.
The reason I bring this up is because Bill and I have resigned from the taxi commission. So needless to say, there is no enforcement and there are no rules. I suggest that the airport get together with people that have been involved with this in the past, which includes Bill and Isaac, and try and formulate some airport rules. Because if you have any problems on the line, forget about anything being done about it downtown. So I'm suggesting that if you want to have a safe traveling public at the airport, you better formulate your own rules and regulations. And I'm willing to help, and I'm sure Bill is too. The only reason I bring that up now is because there's no other place to do it. That's my-
Okay. Anyone else?
Thank you, Bill. Or thank you, Jeff. Yeah.
All right, go ahead with the audit.
Okay, so now we're gonna go through the 53 pages of the audit here. It will take
Line
a
by
little-
line.
Line by line, page by page.
No, bring me to page 51. That's the only- Fast forward to page
All right,
51.
so-
53 is the best page.
Nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong.
No
So-
material.
Yeah, no material.
So, you know, I mean, the audit is, of course, it's always a it's always a good feeling. We had no findings. The auditors found no issues with the airport whatsoever. They had no recommendations on how we could do anything better here. They were very pleased. I thought that it went very smoothly, and we'll see them in the springtime. They'll come back and do a single audit on our grants. But for now, we had the audit, and I'm just gonna highlight a couple of pages because it's a lot of information. And some people love to read through this and find this really interesting. I suspect Kim is probably going to read a lot of it.
Well, yeah, well,
and enjoy it, But I think there's a lot of the most important things I want to say.
Give us the ambient version.
The ambient version. You can play it on your phone if you can't sleep. But the most interesting part here, I think, really kind of where I want to point you to, is if you're going to read any of this, is to look at the management, the MD&A, the management discussion and analysis. Okay, and that starts on page 3. And we just, it goes through, and I actually go through it. We write that here. Okay. So we go through and we talk about things going up this much and things going, what changed year over year. And so I think that that's always kind of like out of all of this report, that's kind of like where you're going to get the most interesting bang for your buck, and to take a look at that. Things that maybe I do want to also highlight, it has quick summaries of our revenues, our expenses, just very grouped together. So it makes it very easy to kind of see. That's on page 5. But I go through, we write little tidbits about all of our things and our different classes of revenues here at the airport. On page 7, we talk, I like this chart too, but I like numbers, but this one is our historical revenues. We've got a group by airline revenues and then our non-airline revenues, really, and it's showing a 5-year comparison. So if you really want a true picture of what happened when COVID hit, all you got to do is look at this chart here, and you're gonna be like, "Ooh, that's what happened." Another important thing on page 12 is our rate calculation, our covenant calculation, which we are required by under our bonds. We have to have at least 1.25 debt coverage, and we have been above that every single year.
I thought that got sunset with the refinancing piece. No? Okay.
No, but
Wasn't there some covenant that we didn't have to calculate?
Well, we don't have debt in 2022.
Right.
So we won't have a rate coverage score.
Right, so going forward.
For a little bit, because we will resume those debt coverage, but they're sitting with they're sitting in escrow, and they're getting paid out of the escrow due to the bond refinance. So our debt calculation, the last 2 years, with our airline agreement, we had a minimum of 1.5. That's what we're supposed to hit exactly. If we go above it, we're supposed to give them back the money. They actually allowed us to keep the excess in the year 1, 2, and 3 of that contract. Year 2021, because of COVID, we did not want to go ask the airlines who were hurting and bleeding just as bad as we were for more money. We were concerned, and we said it's really important to be above our debt coverage score. And we used the stimulus money to make sure that we could cover our expenses, but we didn't, gouge the airlines to get to the 1.5.
Is that a difficult process?
To do what?
To negotiate with the airlines for?
We were within our right under our contract to ask them for more money.
But we didn't.
But we did not. We chose not to.
Okay.
Which is a critical component during COVID. If you look around the country, similar sized airports, small hub airports, just like us, that lost all service.
Mm-hmm.
And they were struggling just like us. They might not have received a lot of funding or backed themselves up with other revenue anticipation notes or any of those types of programs. But the demand stayed with us too. And that's obviously a contributing factor to retaining the airline. So it's an extremely delicate situation with the airlines to make sure that it's an appropriate rate and charge to retain service, and maybe more importantly, to gain additional service, whether that's larger aircraft or just simply a new route. So these rates and charges are critical to that.
Do you need legal counsel when you go through those negotiations, or you do it by yourself?
No, aren't you asking for some more money to do this?
Yeah, later on, we
Yeah,
will be, so.
$125,000 to get some outside counsel to do those negotiations.
You read
right? I
the
did
budget
read it.
amendment. Yes, you
Exactly
did.
right.
Yeah,
Exactly
that's
right.
part of that.
The
Yeah.
original airline contract, we used Joe McNeil, Letty Sheehan offices, and they'll probably help us identify the legal part of this particular update to our upcoming airline negotiations, which is happening or starting in January. And then we'll also retain Recondo and Associates, which is more of a industry expert on what do other similarly sized airports, and maybe most importantly, during COVID, what does rates and charges look like for an airport? Airlines are extremely apprehensive about consultants joining the negotiating team, which is something that, again, we have delicately balanced. Obviously, we want the right form and format, but we don't need to gouge the airlines at all.
Yeah.
Never should.
Okay.
I mean, we look at them as our partners and as everybody that's on airport facility. And we want everybody to be successful, but we have to make sure that we're being equitable across our different partners. And we have to make sure that we're whole, that we're covering all of our expenses and doing well and able to grow and thrive.
And while the airline revenue is, of course, an important revenue, the residual revenue based off of those passengers is more important. The parking garage revenue, the rental car revenue, the concessions, all of those residual costs that come with each individual passenger is really what we're looking for with additional services.
Okay.
Do you know, can I just ask a question in terms of how much of, I just wondered, since Vermont did, led the nation, frankly, in dealing with COVID, and we have a high vaccination rate and people wear masks and that kind of stuff. Did that have an impact in bringing in more ARPA or PPC money or the SURF or whatever it's called, the other? I'm just curious.
No, because it's based on a formula based on, they do this, they don't look to see that our vaccination rates didn't help us get more money.
Oh,
that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
I was just curious. I wish it did. Wouldn't that be even better? So
What a great incentive for states to do better, right? By accessing additional funding. Same with masks, when the FAA.
We're a little bit off topic, if I may. A little bit off topic. It's all a healthy discussion, but okay.
But anyway,
Sorry.
those are the most important things that I would like to point out as part of the audit. And unless anybody, I'm willing to entertain any questions that you might have. I strongly recommend you read it from cover to cover, maybe not in one setting. But, I just wanted you to be aware of, like, if I were to tell anybody to go, like, where to go and look, and where I would say you'll get the most value out of taking a look at it.
Marie, this is your shining hour.
I love
Your
it.
shining hour.
To me, it's more the culmination of the shining months. I know what it takes to.
No, congratulations. I was looking for non-compliance in that whole 51 to 53, and I couldn't find a non-compliance at all.
No, we will.
Great job, absolutely.
We will not have any, and the auditors will put together a management letter to the city when they're done the city audit, which they are not done. In fact, we're the only department that is done. But when they do put the management letter, there's no comments from the airport. They found nothing with us. No.
And I'll reiterate that too. Maria has spent an extensive amount of time every year, but particularly this year, and has done an outstanding job. So a huge thank you to Marie and everybody that's helped you out.
Yeah.
Really, really important and great audit.
Yeah. Well, and everybody's always so good about, when others, when we're getting ready or when they come, there are questions that they touch on other areas. And so it really has to be a team effort. Yeah.
With a good leader.
Yeah.
Any other questions of Marie? Nice going again. Yep. Let's see, action items, Recondo and Associates contract.
So I move that we recommend to the Board of Finance and City Council the request to amend the current contract with Recondo and Associates.
I'll second that.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion from whom?
So Recondo, this is an amendment to an existing contract that we have with them. We hired them a few years ago to pull together two applications to the FAA. This is how we have to put these applications together to be able to spend down that PFC money that we are collecting on every
Is this
ticket.
an accounting firm or is it a management firm? Or?
No, they're like a consulting firm.
Okay,
And they help us put together the application for
Okay.
the PFC.
okay, continue.
So we are about 90, we already submitted one to the FAA in 2020, got approved. Now we're getting ready to submit another one, and we're probably 95% through. We need a little bit more money. This is an amendment to the existing contract to finish it up. And we have, I think, we have like 25 projects on there. It's pretty long. So that is the reason, but we're bringing it forward because we're required under procurement rules to do so.
Okay, any questions of Marie? Tim?
You just touched on what I was going to ask.
Yeah,
I
this
said,
is-
wow, $13,000 requires approval. So is there not a level beneath which approval is not needed?
Well, the contract itself, they look at the contract as a contract because we're amending an existing task order, we'll say. And we had authorization under the original contract 2 years ago to do that, except that it ended with a fiscal year. And so I had to come back and ask for this little bit of increase.
Okay.
So
So
it's
generally,
housekeeping, really.
if anything is under $50,000,
That's what I thought it was.
then we would not bring it forward. If it's between 50 and 100,000, we would bring it forward to you and only the Board of Finance. And then if it's over $100,000, then it goes Airport Commission, Board of Finance, and City Council.
So it was a new contract for 13,000. We wouldn't even be talking
wouldn't
about
have
it
done
because it's amended to increase an old one by 13,000. Yeah.
You got it.
Because it's over the 50 and it's the expired date or timeframe.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any further questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Hi.
All right.
All
Aye.
opposed, no? All opposed, no? So ordered. Next item is a budget amendment of the aviation director. Motion, Tim?
Oh, sorry. I move that we recommend the Board of Finance.
Wait a minute, you got, it's a table item, so you move it off the table.
No, we're on 7.02.
We're on 702. The airport budget amendment.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got confused. All right, next budget amendment.
All right. Would you like that? Would you like that?
Yeah, I mean, like,
There's a motion to.
No,
no, that's not.
I was about to make a motion
Okay.
that we recommend to the Board of Finance and City Council the proposed budget amendment.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay, now we'll go ahead.
So I think you've seen some budget amendments in the past. This is relatively a large one. I think the substantial item on here is related to an upcoming grant that we're expecting. So we want to be ahead of it. That's about 600,000 of this $1 million budget amendment. And then there's some residual costs that Marie is going to be shifting around, and you can add more to that context as well.
Yeah, so, typically a couple of times a year, I'll bring sort of, I call them a mid-year budget amendment, but where I look at how are we trending and how are we spending things, and are we spending differently than I budgeted? And that's really, as we see what we're doing here. So Helen, you've already picked up, and I know you read it because you saw what I put for the legal expenses. So, we're finding that we're spending more on legal expenses than I had anticipated when I put the budget together. We've also, there's a $60,000 budget item for furniture because we're going to be redoing all of our admin office space and just wanting to make sure that we have enough funds in there to cover, what we're going to be anticipate that we might be doing. We've been looking at shops to see how our space could look different as we go about that. So it's going ahead and just the individual line items, just making sure that we're covering. We had some savings. I knew it was a reappraisal for South Burlington. I increased my real estate tax line items in anticipation of not knowing where that might shake out. because we really don't know until we get the bills. And as it turned out, I overestimated. So I had some savings that, just usually in a typical year, it changes. I can kind of go by 1% and I'm going to be in the ballpark. But this case, I knew there would be some shifting around. So I was a little too conservative, so that I used some of the savings from that. And the other major way that I'm covering those increases in those expenditures, the grant is neutral. Their gasoline for the QTA, that's a revenue neutral. We charge the car rental companies for the gasoline. So you're going to see an increase to the fuel items specific to the QTA. You're going to see the same thing in the revenues. And then the only other offset that I have to cover my other increases is because when I was estimating what I would have left under the Carissa stimulus grant, I thought we would have spent a little bit more in last year. So my budget for this year was a little bit low in that. And I as it turned out, we didn't use quite as much last year as I thought we would when I was budgeting for this year, and I was able to increase that number.
Good, okay.
So that's the gist. And
Good.
if you have any specific
Questions?
questions, let me know.
Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, no. So ordered. Next item is the job description. Tim?
So I defer to the chair on how to properly bring this up. So I don't know how that works, because it was technically tabled. It was not.
It's on the table, so we have to move to take it off the table
Okay, so I'd like to,
and then vote on it.
okay, so I would like to move that we take off the table the job description, the director job description we discussed last
I'll second that.
Motion made to take the item of the aviation director job description off the table. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. So ordered. Next item is the item itself, the aviation director job description. Going to approve it?
I move that we
Wait a minute.
approve the, I think Jeff has.
What happened to number 8? The noise monitoring system.
We didn't get there yet.
We're not there yet.
Oh, you reverse things?
No, there's 2 amendments, Jeff. One is for the.
Okay, all right, okay, gotcha.
Okay,
Okay, so I
where we remove the approval of the,
I move the approval of the revised job description for the director of aviation.
I'll second that.
discussion. Nick, you've seen that job description. There's been some amendments to the initial one. Do you have any comments on that at all?
No, I think it is, consistent with the job duties of the director of aviation. So I would agree that it should be moved to the HR director, or however you just had the motion there, to be moved forward to whatever the next steps would be.
Okay, any questions?
I just have a question. Do we know what the next steps are? Or is this just, this is our good work and we're sending it on and they'll either take it or leave it?
I would recommend that after we approve it, that we send it to HR for consideration.
Okay.
And then they can do what they want. And if they, and I don't know what the mechanics are after that, but at least that gives us something, Helen, to judge the director on come next May or June. So ready for the question? If so, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. So I don't know, Nick, they eliminate the attributions of BK and
Clean it up and send it.
clean it
on.
up and send it forward to the HR director for consideration.
Absolutely.
Okay? All right, next one is a taxi report from me. This sort of supplements what Jeff Munger was talking about. We had a taxi, the taxi board is now a combination of the Transportation, Energy, and Utilities Committee of the City Council with members of the Vehicle for Hire Board, with Jeff Munger and I were members, and we've since withdrawn, so it's left with the City Council's 2. That is staffed, the staff by Amy, what's her?
Bovee.
Amy Bovee, who is extremely talented woman, but extremely busy. So this is not very high on her list. So we can expect very little report. And I did talk to Isaac down on the line the other day, and there's virtually no enforcement of taxi rules down here on the line. The drivers are taking a leak out in the line there, and there's nothing you can do because there are no rules. And we need the city attorney to help us with this rulemaking process. And with the number of police officers down to 64, enforcement of our taxi laws is virtually zero. So we're in difficult shape, and this is not an accusation of anybody, but this is an appraisal of the situation that's happening downtown and with our taxi customers are at some degree of risk. So you can drive a car around town and say you're a taxi driver and you come to the airport and do what you want. That's too bad. But there's not much that this commission or the airport itself can do about this. It's all downtown. So I just thought I'd let you know about that to give you some. Also, want to sort of bring this up to the public's awareness of what's going on. So Jeff, I don't know if you have anything to say more than that.
Well, I don't even think the taxis that you have at the airport are licensed.
Yes, they are. Jeff, if I don't mind.
Through who? Not the city.
Through us here at the airport. And then
That's
Amy has a running list of folks that do renew that we are on top of to ensure for the queue line.
Are there any, do we know, are there any complaints? Man, I remember when Ted was on the city council, I think he was on the taxi committee too. And at the time I think there were some real concerns about safety because a number of the drivers were ex-felons. And so I don't know I can't remember what rules they came up with concerning, your past work experience or whatever in order to
Background checks, yeah.
background check.
Yeah.
So, but, I'm just curious if you've had any complaints.
Yes, we had a hearing a couple of weeks ago, I think it was. One person didn't have 3 felonies in the past year, so we granted her license. And then there were 2 other controversial ones, and we issued I haven't seen it yet. We've issued a letter of reprimand. But then you could also say so what? I get a letter of reprimand, so what? And it's because there's no enforcement. But there had been a couple of complaints, and we've dealt with them as a board, and then we bailed out.
How about the airport, since you license these people? I mean, is there, Shelby, so what do you do if someone complains about a licensed airport taxi driver?
I think it's important to note that for the drivers at the airport, I personally run their background checks annually when it's renewal season. So I do ensure, along with Isaac, that folks' records are appropriate. But if someone does complain, we do escalate to Amy, which does get brought to this board. A lot of the time here, we do have one-on-one conversations with folks, though. Over the past year, I've had 3 complaints that were formal.
Okay. All right, that's all I had. Thank you. Next item, the noise monitoring system.
The data.
Yes, so Hannah's going to share the screen just so I can guide everybody on where these are located. So I'm happy to report that all 3 noise monitors are now functioning. If you go to the public portal, you can identify and see all 3 of those noise monitors that I reviewed last commission meeting. We are also, and this is a significant amount of work from Hannah, hosting these, the raw data associated with each noise event on our website. These should be in Excel. They are in Excel. Mayor Lott, one of your city councilors also reached out to specifically request that. Had a great
All the other ones were.
That's the only.
Thanks.
That's the only one that's- you clicked on- yeah, you clicked on the one that's
Thanks,
PDF, but the other ones.
That was the original one, I think we picked from last time, so, yeah.
And it is a significant amount of data. This is located on the btv.aero website as well as btvsound.com. It does show, not that part. It does show some detailed, significant data associated with these noise events and different, like as you can see here, different terminology associated with each noise event, such as L max, which is the maximum sound level, SEL, which is that single event level, or a very defined terminology associated with the time frame, which is also on this, the duration section. How long was this event? And then some of these very detailed terminologies of noise.
So is that in seconds, like 65 under for duration?
That's correct. That's correct.
And there's a what do you call it, a way to understand what those words mean?
Correct. We have a chart.
Chart.
Yeah,
Yep, on the BTV Sound website.
Okay.
which is difficult because these are highly scientific, very sometimes difficult to understand. Even as I go through it, I have to remind myself time and time again exactly what these mean. One of the good or one of the items that I think many people are going to be looking for is you can see some of these longer events with generally higher noise levels associated with that entire period of time. Most likely that is a military aircraft departure or an F-35 departure because of that particular noise event. I think that the the public portal has been very successful so far. We're looking at some of these noise comments that are submitted through those. We'll continue to update you on those particular noise comments and make sure that those are presented to you at monthly meetings, as well as at these. My hope is as often as we possibly can to the particular websites.
That site is fun to just go and watch a plane take off. You get a sense of what the background is already, and with a plane like on Williston Road, there's literally a limited bit difference. So it's kind of neat to look at background, and watch this plane take off.
Good. Well, good, you delivered the product you said you would 3 months ago. Here it is.
It's
Thank you.
here, it's operational, and it is online and fully functional.
Yep, good, nice going.
A lot of people have spent a lot of time on this. Larry spent maybe more time than he originally thought just because of changes in the location, and certainly Hannah has put a tremendous amount of time learning the system and updating it.
Good, any questions?
I
folks?
have two.
Tim?
So this is great because you brought up my question right away. We're just like,
I like
is
that.
Williston higher because it's like closer to the road?
It's next.
Because
to
it's
the two.
consistently, I was watching it for like 15 minutes today. It's like it's consistently higher than the other two locations.
It is, and if you watch that during rush hour, 5 o'clock, right? You're most likely going to get around an average 70 or greater decibel levels. Winooski sometimes shows a very similar situation where there's no aircraft, but you can see it kind of rising there, which is happening right now.
Right.
And that could be anything. That could be.
Absolutely. We talked about the fire truck example
Exactly.
and all of that before.
Exactly.
But it's interesting because the choice of the placement could lead to data that's not really accurate. Because you're like, wow, we're at a 74 average in Williston.
Well, not necessarily. So that's a great point, which corresponds to those single aircraft noise events that we present on the Excel files. Those are only associated with radar track information.
Okay.
So that event is an aircraft event. It doesn't take into account all of these spikes.
So the Excel data is strictly aviation.
It is strictly related to aviation noise.
And where exactly in Williston is the monitor?
You know where the new U-Haul big building they just built along Route 2?
Oh, yeah, where they took down that beautiful forest? Yeah, no, exactly.
Directly across
across from there.
on the other side of the road.
It was
There goes our
unique
carbon
and
sequestration.
kind of fell in our lap where
Mm.
he had ownership of this, 100 by 100 foot piece of land
Williston.
in is that what I
You
said?
said Williston,
Oh, sorry.
but Williston.
Williston owned this 100 by 100 foot piece of land that was perfect for this, and it's directly, as you can see, directly over the flight path or under the flight path,
Right.
and at the right contour.
Mayor Law, do you have any questions about this process or on this discussion? Do you have any questions?
Thanks. Just wondering where we should direct folks to go who want to learn how to use the portal or understand the noise data better for some of that context that you all were just discussing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think btvsound.com is the perfect place to send folks. Not only will it identify some of the other programs, the noise exposure map documentation, but will lead directly to this particular website, which has a help button on the bottom left-hand corner. If you click on that, it identifies how to use this entire layout right here, how to submit comments, how to search for addresses, etc., and as well as additional information associated specifically with these noise monitors.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I understand. So Hannah, can you go back to the, not the map, but the page before the map? So right there, in italics, like 2/3 of the way down, it says for all military noise complaints, please contact the National Air Guard.
Yeah.
So does that mean we might have a segregation in our data that people aren't gonna leave the noise complaint in this portal and they're instead going to call the guard?
100%. And it's even beyond that because the FAA has initiated their own noise complaint website themselves because they're trying to compile that information themselves. We partnered with the FAA to try to guide that process. And when I had a conversation with them and showed them this, they said we're 10 times ahead of where they are on that particular avenue. So I'm not ready to really move down that route. But you're 100% correct. Some noise complaints are going to go through this system. The military likes to track their noise complaints, so they would like to request that information directly to them, which in most situations is the appropriate avenue because they can address specific issues or comments or concerns related to their own operation. And then of course we have our noise complaint system, which is going to collect all of the information. So it's not going to, it will not show just one centralized.
Because I think we've done this before, where South Burlington at one time had different guidance on how to report a noise complaint than the other communities. And I saw this and like, oh, it kind of reminded me.
Yeah, that's where we were directed. I mean,
Correct.
because that was the noise complaint. I'm sure you don't get all that many complaints on commercial transportation.
Correct.
I mean, maybe when the planes are idling in someone's backyard, but
Right.
we have begun to address that or have addressed that.
Right. And
So the
similar.
real complaints are
Right.
the jets, the military jets, and then it's compounded with some other aviation noise.
Right.
I mean, I know they don't take off at the same time, but
Right.
if you're watching for 15 minutes, the jets take off and then United takes off.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
Anything else? Okay, let's move on to the director's report.
So what my team and I have been working on, especially in the month of December, although sometimes it's not always successful, is just slowing down a little bit. We are incredibly busy. And in the spirit of that, I do not have a significant director's report for you today. I think we all have a lot on our minds, both in the upcoming holiday, but we are tremendously busy with everything that we talked about right now, as well as potential future challenges, which I'll bring you up to speed on in future meetings. I think I'm incredibly happy with the success of this entire team, and we have a lot of work to do. As I mentioned, I'm very excited to introduce you, I'm hoping in January, to the new Deputy Director of Operations. And I wish everybody a happy holiday.
Thank you, thank you. Gee, follow-up items. Didn't we had at one time a National Guard, wasn't the Guard supposed to give us a report on the resident, their members by zip code?
Yeah, I can get back, I can follow up with them on that,
Okay, so would you put that back on that
on
list?
the follow-up item?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
and that might have been on me, and I apologize. They responded the day after that meeting. So I do have that information, and I apologize if I didn't.
Oh, okay.
send it along.
All right, so you have the
Yeah.
next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, good. Tim George, that's really, it's your bailiwick, this item.
Yep, so we'll start with the three that are on here already, which is the public right to know orientation. Bill, that's.
No, just, we're gonna keep that going. I mean, you guys got enough to do now without that, but when the time is right, we'll just keep that up, okay?
Next is 10.02, it says airport rules, but I think this is airport rules on taxis.
Yeah,
Anything further you want
yeah,
to discuss on that?
that's, again, Shelby probably on top of that, and until we get some support from downtown, there's not too much we can do about it, but it's something that we really gotta,
Is
Yeah,
there
on top of it.
something deliverable you're looking for on that, Bill?
is it what?
Something you're looking
Deliverable.
specifically to get from.
Yeah, oh, I have no idea. No.
So we'll just keep it on the follow-up item and then we'll just,
Yeah.
when you want to discuss taxi, we'll just discuss it during the follow-up items.
Yeah,
And then the airport layout plan, I think this is also your request, Bill, from the last meeting.
okay, let's see, there, you have down here new category, what did you mean by that?
Looks like, and
Like commissioner's items or?
it does not, it looks like it was an error, so
Oh.
apologies.
No, that's all right, well,
Made it
It's
to
a
the end,
feature
made it to
board
the end.
docs.
Yeah, made it to the end of the list there.
okay,
So Bill, on the airport layout plan, were you looking for something on that from the last meeting?
no, don't remember what that, was that the map of the, final map of the airport, Larry, did
To the
you?
from the master plan.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's being finally reviewed by, or finished up by the FAA and it's signed right now. So.
okay,
They
so-
haven't approved it yet.
Not-
No, they
not
haven't signed-
officially,
They haven't
no.
signed it yet.
okay, so when that's approved, we'll keep that on there, is that okay?
I think that's appropriate. Yeah,
Okay,
there's a dedicated website, btvmasterplan.com, if you want to go through some of the details and the diagrams and things
so
like that.
just that layout plan was approved by FAA, okay.
Okay, and then just a couple other things. So I did go through and noticed we missed one from October. So I just want to add this for next month, which is the analysis of the types of incidents that police respond to at the airport. That's sort of fell off, so I want to make sure that one gets back on there. And then as of today, I've noted 5 new items, which is either a map or a description of the I don't know what we want to call it, but the groups of 50 homes and what that looks like going
Kind of
forward.
rollout, yeah.
The ratio of those homes by community. If there's an appeal process for a homeowner, if they've been initially not approved. Nick, you'll send the job description to HR. And you'll also send us the guard numbers by zip code. Is there anything else that?
Well, I just noticed that the South Burlington report is no longer on this, so I'm just curious. You don't want to hear from us?
I do, and I don't, you don't need an item to hear from you,
Okay, well, it was an item in the past, just
Right.
to,
but that's, I mean, you,
okay, well, so I just want to.
no,
Oh,
to clarify that, no, when I worked that over, I said, wait a minute. Helen has an opportunity every single meeting to put something on. It's not just, then, you know, if we ever get to South Burlington, Winooski and all that kind of stuff. Feel free, and you know how to do this.
right,
So if you have an item, you just add that to the agenda.
okay. So I will add one to next.
If it's in the discussion item, it doesn't have to be like a specific document or something. I mean,
Yeah, no, I
If there's
just
anything you want to
was used to having it sort of on it, so I
Yeah.
never thought about saying, oh, yeah, I have something to say.
You can still do that.
Can I do it tonight?
Do it now.
Okay, I will. So I just wanted to let people know that the task force or the subcommittee to look at rezoning portions of properties owned by the airport, specifically, I believe, where the old dog park is, right along, I get my directions mixed up. I don't know if it's east, the west side, or if it's the
West.
west side. And so they are meeting tomorrow night. And so it's moving forward. There's people from the airport. There's a couple of community members. Megan Emery, the counselor, has been assigned, although she won't attend tomorrow because she can't. And I don't know who else. There's a couple other people. So I think Paul Connor,
And your new city planner.
or the new one, the new city planner, that could be.
Yeah.
I can't remember her name, but so that's just going forward. And I did get an interesting, I think we all got an interesting email from one of the members. Did you get that? It was on Front Porch Forum.
No.
I will, or maybe I got an email. I will send it to you. It was concerning to him that it was concerning to him that, you know, all this property is going to be built on, and, you know, it's negative to the community. But he's representing that neighborhood, so he
I
will
see.
articulate that, I'm sure, at the meeting.
Yeah. And
So I mean, just be prepared for that. I understand. People are used to the beautiful park
yeah,
like setting, and
Yeah.
that's what they'd like to keep it as, I think.
yeah, I think a big thank you to South Burlington for reintroducing this. Larry and I met with Paul Connor and the new city planner to reintroduce this, to start this conversation, to understand that there was a subcommittee, which is tremendously helpful. So I think tomorrow night, which is one of our challenges, is to make sure that we're not trying to say that we're going to expand like crazy in that particular area, but making sure we use that land appropriately, which is not into the neighborhood, but a best use of land directly adjacent to some of our property lines. So we're excited to start that process.
Yeah, I think there's actually someone on the Economic Development Committee on the subcommittee as well.
Great,
Because it is an economic development issue
Yeah.
for
absolutely,
the city as well.
absolutely.
Okay, well, Hannah sends out the request for items for the agenda. And
Okay, I will
that's our
include a South
opportunity.
Burlington update, and maybe at some point we want to hear from Winooski as well. I know they're not on the council yet, or the commission, but they are an impacted neighbor.
Mary Lott is welcome anytime, and we give her as much freedom of
Right.
discussion and questions and answers as she wants. Okay, anything else? And we'll put out a commissioner's items, I think, from now on, for sort of like a potpourri of things like that. So, okay,
Okay, great.
I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
And I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion to adjourn, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
At 5:25 PM. Thank you.
Good.